Hey everyone, Simon Townsend from ControlUp. I am pleased to be joined today by Chris Marks from Parallels. Hey Chris.
Hey Simon, how you doing? Good to see you again.
Good, thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
I am what's called an Outbound Product Manager at Parallels, which means I spend a lot of time talking to partners, customers, prospects about how to make the product better.
Excellent. So me and you have been in this space for some time. How long has it been?
20 years, I would guess, if I was going to pick a year.
Okay.
Something like that.
Good. And how long have you been at Parallels now?
So I've been at Parallels almost 4 years, but in the end user computing space for 25 years.
So for those people that don't know, why don't you give us a little bit of background on who Parallels is and what they're up to?
Yeah, so Parallels' main focus is giving customers the right application at the right time in the right format. So the whole company is focused on delivering applications to people. So whether that's on a device, whether that's virtual delivery, whether that's securing a web browser without any desktop at all in place, but delivering secure zero trust browser access, all of those things are going on the back end. Whereas at the front, the normal human, the normal kind of non-IT person, really doesn't care about any of that complexity in life. So our focus is delivering the applications in a consistent way, no matter where they're fetched from, no matter what decisions IT make. That's where the whole company comes from.
Okay. So more than, or should I say, going beyond just virtual desktop infrastructure.
Yeah, so that's a big part of what we do, obviously, but it's not only that, because we've seen over the last 10 years that market, that whole we're only delivering our applications one way has transformed.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about virtual desktop infrastructure and desktop as a service. There's obviously been a number of different names and vendors in this space for a while, and things have been changing and evolving over the last couple of years. How do you see things from a Parallels point of view now, and what are you seeing in the market?
From a market point of view, I mean, it's obvious that companies have made business decisions to change how they go to market, relationships they have with customers. And from their point of view, they're making decisions that they think are going to be better for their business. But some of the decisions that some of the players in the market have had potentially negative impacts in some segments of that market. And some partners as well. So companies have decided to reduce the number of partners, for example, that kind of stuff. And what it's meant is you'll have customers who feel a little bit disenfranchised with the solutions perhaps they chose before. So what is definitely happening is customers who previously would have got a renewal through the email and gone, right, let's just renew that. That's just a line item and I'm just going to tick a box. Almost all of them, well, in fact, all of the ones I talk to are all reconsidering what they do. Every single customer is looking at it and going, okay, do we still need to do it this way or do we need to start doing it a different way? So it's a real transitionary kind of time to be in the industry, really, is because customers are all kind of making these decisions. Whereas before, when I kind of started my early career, there were very few decisions to make. You either did or you didn't.
Yeah.
So that's had a real change in the market, which means organizations such as Parallels have grown into the space where perhaps other organizations have departed. So it's been a really kind of interesting time to be working in the industry. And I don't know if you guys have kind of found the same thing.
It is definitely, there's a lot of change at the moment going on.
Yeah.
And I think people are, particularly now you've got to that point, 4 or 5 years since COVID, organizations had to make some pretty fast, rapid decisions during that time. And whether they are traditional desktop, those laptops are now coming to the end of their life and people are looking at what they're going to do next, or they deployed some form of VDI or desktop as a service to enable remote working, and they're now, again, they're up for that 3-4 year renewal and they're thinking, okay, where do I go next? So yeah, I think we're at an inflection point, and we definitely see a lot of transition, a lot of growth in the VDI and the desktop as a service space. So it's interesting. So Parallels is growing, which is good.
Yeah.
What does that transition look like for a customer moving to Parallels? Simple, difficult?
It's pretty easy. So if obviously it depends, because, once a techie, always a techie. The answer is always it depends. So a lot of the challenge is not a technical challenge converting one piece of technology for another. A lot of the challenge is a customer often only finds out late that a renewal perhaps isn't the number they expected it to be, and it's a significantly different number that their budget hasn't accounted for. So because a lot of customers are finding out late, we have developed solutions that can actually migrate customers in an accelerated format. So, for example, we had a UK-based customer with 2,500 applications, migrated them in less than 2 weeks, for example. So migration is actually quite straightforward. What tends to be the complexity is actually during that migration itself. So working out what needs to migrate when, and if perhaps the new environment I'm migrating to, because very few customers have a completely greenfield site and then they switch off the old way, they have to kind of migrate in phases and reuse kind of back-end infrastructure or cloud services or whatever. They haven't got the budget for 2 infrastructures. And that's where things like ControlUp come into play, right? So you've got ControlUp with parallels in the new environment, and we can then detect, hang on, the new environment isn't dealing with the number of users I'm migrating, so therefore I need to make some more changes. I need to accelerate or decelerate in some way, and it helps inform how we migrate. So yes, from a technical point of view, we can migrate as fast as the customer is willing to implement that change. We can install our product on top of competitors' products without changing anything underneath. We just flip one agent to another agent and it all kind of works out of the box. But customers have their own change control. So we can go as fast as the customers. Change control, I guess, is probably the best way to word it.
On-prem, cloud, what are you seeing at the moment?
We're seeing a really mixed bag. We're seeing a lot of customers who from the outside in are being told cloud is the only way to go. From the inside up, they are being told this is going to take us longer than you want it to take us because there's complexity. And with complexity comes cost. So currently, if I'm on-prem, the cost is a known, managed, finite resource. I've budgeted for that. As soon as I start introducing complexity into the cloud, it starts giving me unknown costs, which I didn't bargain for in the first place. So you've either got to build in a lot of buffer because there's things you didn't account for that are happening, or you've got to have deep pockets, or both, I guess, from that point of view. So what we're seeing is customers take measured steps into cloud adoption to make sure they're doing it in the right way. So that's not achieving a 6-month cloud migration, which is what everyone was talking about 5 years ago. But it's more of a step-by-step process to say, look, probably cloud is our ultimate destination, but we need to go at the speed of our business, not the speed of our vendor. That's kind of mostly what we see.
And Parallels supports both?
Yeah.
No problem at all? You don't care what the underlying infrastructure looks like?
So from a VDI point of view, from a Parallels RAS, Parallels Remote Application Server point of view, that's the kind of VDI end user computing kind of thing. It's a single license. So a customer could be deploying applications from Microsoft ABD, they could be deploying them out of AWS, they could be deploying them on-prem, physical infrastructure, doesn't matter. From a user point of view, if I'm consuming applications from all of those places, it's just one license. So we're designed for the fact that it's likely that a customer is not going to be delivering things from a single location. The customer is going to be in this hybrid kind of world. And that's how Parallel has always operated. So the customer can then choose. So this is where I'm saying when they go the speed of their own business. So us as a vendor, we are not dictating the fact they've got to move to this new platform in a certain amount of time, or you got to buy a particular license, otherwise you can't go, or you can't change your mind. We just give them one license, and it's entirely up to them where they deploy those applications from.
Yeah, great. So me and you have been doing this for a while. I'm sure many people that are watching this understand why an organization might move to some form of virtualized desktop. Are there any new reasons, new use cases, new markets that you're seeing that are suddenly consuming VDI?
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with VDI. There's also a shift away from installed applications, right? So there's quite a few things going on. So we've seen a big shift in customers saying they are really going hard using software as a service applications. So the web browser is then becoming more important. The challenge with software as a service applications is people at the top of the business assume it also means I'm going to use less resource. But what's actually happening is the application that used to be an installed application is now embedded inside a web browser tab, and it's still using the same amount of resource as it did do when it was installed on the desktop or laptop or whatever. So we're seeing a big shift in software as a service for two reasons. One, it gives the security people less of a headache because it's evergreen, so it has to be upgraded because it's being delivered to me as a service. And it's also a massive advantage to the application vendors because the application vendors are now in control. They haven't got to chase their customers because they're on 3 versions old. It's end of life. I need you to kind of guilt you into upgrading, that kind of stuff. That's all gone. So we're seeing a lot of that. From a VDI point of view, it's obvious that since the pandemic, companies who previously had poo-pooed the idea of working from home are finding themselves that's just part of their normal world. And so therefore, from a security point of view, virtualized desktops or centralized desktops and mobile users makes a lot more sense from a security point of view because the data doesn't move. So we're seeing a lot of that. The other thing that's happening in the short term right now is the cost of hardware provisioning. So the cost of memory is going up exponentially. That's partly because of the AI requirements for memory and the companies that make that stuff focusing on those particular specialties. But it means customers that have otherwise bought a whole fleet of kind of fat clients, of laptops, say, are finding the cost of that is now disproportionately high compared to the cost it used to be. So they're coming into a net new requirement for virtual desktops and that kind of stuff.
So the TCO of virtualizing your desktop is potentially improving.
Yeah, so everything needs memory, right? Servers need memory, desktops need memory. But if you're looking at buying 10,000 desktops versus 50, 100 servers, perhaps the economies of scale are different there. So the economics work a little bit better than perhaps they used to 12 months ago.
Okay. So you mentioned SaaS-based applications there. Back in the day, if I wanted to deploy a SaaS application, I'd spin up RAS. I put the browser on as a published application, and away we would go. Is there more that Parallels are now doing with SaaS-based applications?
Yeah. So, and that's still possible, right? There are still customers that do that.
Yeah.
The challenge is it's not a very efficient way to do it, right? If all I'm going to use is a browser, why am I spinning up a Windows desktop underneath that browser, paying for the licenses for that Windows desktop when I don't ever see it? All I'm looking at is the kind of Google Chrome browser or whatever browser it happens to be. So what we have is a solution called Parallels Browser Isolation. And what that's doing is that's using cloud native technology. So hardened Linux VMs with Chromium containers sitting on the top of them that then get sent to the user. So rather than give them VDI just to get a browser, they're getting a native browser in a cloud native container delivered to the user. They operate that remotely, securely. The Chromium container is the thing that accesses the software as a service application. So as a company, I'm in complete control of the browser because the user's browser could be infested with malware and extensions that aren't approved and all this kind of stuff. That doesn't go anywhere near my software as a service application. I connect to a secure browser, and it's only the secure browser that then accesses the SaaS app. So that's called Parallels Browser Isolation. That sits in parallel, pardon the pun, to Parallels RAS, which is still focused on that kind of virtual desktop, Windows kind of desktop and application backend.
As an employee, I don't really see much difference. If I'm accessing an application that's being delivered from a Windows desktop via Parallels RAS, or I'm accessing this secure, isolated browser, it's an application. Applications that are being delivered to me.
Yeah, so we have a Parallels client or a user portal, so a web front end or an install client. And from an icons point of view, I can make it such that I just see 10 icons. Some of those icons might be launching an ABD desktop. Some of those icons might be launching applications on-prem. Some of them might be launching what I've just described with Parallels browser isolation.
Wow.
Frankly, I don't care as a user. I'm not in IT.
Yep.
I'm in human resources, or I'm in finance, or whatever I'm in. I don't care where these things are coming from or what decisions you guys are making in the back end. I just want to do my day job. So even if I move the application delivery from one delivery method to another, let's say the application vendor has stipulated that I must consume their SaaS app, whereas before it was installed, well, you keep the icon the same, you just change the delivery method. So that's kind of where we're focused. So at the point of consumption, everything is consistent. Yeah.
Good. So talking of point of consumption and employee experience, we obviously do some work together between ControlUp and Parallels.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the synergies between our two organizations and the value that we provide our customers?
Well, it all boils down to allowing, I guess, the customer to make the choice, right? So we enable that customer to choose where they operate their applications from. One of the considerations for allowing them to do that is there might be application performance challenges with one delivery method versus another. There might be optimizations that can be made with one delivery method or another. I might have the ability to run out of two locations, the same application. And from a Parallels RAS point of view, we have the telemetry built in to say, hey, this is not great. But what ControlUp brings is not only, hey, this is not great, but I'm going to fix this. So I can inform you that it's not great, and I can actually start delivering remediation to start making that life better. So from an end user experience point of view, we enable the administrator to deliver stuff to the user in a consistent and kind of pleasurable way. Mm-hmm. But what you guys bring is to make sure what the company is delivering to that end user is delivered consistently across all platforms. Mm-hmm. And that could be local as well. So we've got solutions that deliver that locally. So the whole ControlUp portfolio helps an organization from a consistency point of view across our entire product portfolio as well. So the synergy, I think, is really quite strong, which hence we're here.
So tell us a little bit more. You mentioned then about delivering applications natively. That's new to me.
Oh, so that would be delivering like an application that happens to perhaps be running on my local MacBook, for example. I can deliver a local application. I can deliver a virtual application that happens to be running on Windows. I can be delivering a web browser application. So that's where the native thing comes in. There's cloud native, which is the architecture that's used for Parallels browser isolation, but that's using kind of containers and a kind of cloud native architectures in order to do that as well.
Right. So regardless of how you want to get that application to an employee, you guys can worry about that.
Yep.
And we can worry about making sure that the experience of that application, regardless of how it's delivered, is performing well and doing what's intended.
It's one of the pitfalls of hybrid, right? One of the pitfalls of hybrid is I'm obtaining these applications from an inconsistent source. We're not in control of your cloud provider, right? So because we're not in control of your cloud provider, we can't tell you how fast or slow that application is going to be on any given day. You might have more control over your on-premises estate, but what ControlUp gives the administrator the ability to do is actually then make decisions on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis to say, hey, look, for whatever reason we're having an issue here, and this is the reason, we're not in control of that cloud backend. So what we're actually going to do is start delivering more of this instead. And those are the informed decisions that between kind of Parallels and ControlUp, we can actually start helping the customer make those operational procedural changes that deliver better experience for their users.
Good. SaaS seems to be a little bit of a challenge at the moment for at least a lot of the prospects and the customers that I speak to, particularly around what I would call shadow SaaS. Mm-hmm. And that is various different departments who are going out, acquiring licenses as a business unit and not necessarily telling IT that they're doing it. It's an area that obviously ControlUp helps with and can identify. I'm assuming there's a there's a better together story there between the two of us, which is, okay, well, first of all, we need to understand what SaaS applications are in use across your organization, because IT or the CFO might not know about them. Secondly, how they're accessing them in terms of how they're actually signing in, what IDP are they using, et cetera, and are they coming in off a trusted device. There's an argument about how they perform as well. I suppose there's an argument, in fact, even if IT does know about what SaaS applications are out there, how many of those licenses are being used or not being used. So software asset management, software reclamation is something else. If we've got the ability to understand that and provide that telemetry, I'm assuming then we can then take those said SaaS applications and port them into a managed browser. And to your point earlier, manage the browser in the same way that we've been managing a desktop via VDI for the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, so ControlUp's great at all the stuff you've mentioned, and it's not really where we play, which is where the partnership really comes in. So the way we would play is you guys would inform us, or your software via the customer would say, hey, look, I'm detecting these applications are in use. So what we would do is, look, from an enterprise point of view, we can ensure that the only way to access those SaaS applications is via the method in which you specify. For example, we've got these instances of parallel browser isolation. Let's take, I don't know, the Azure console just as an example, right? Mm-hmm. So I got a series of guys, 20 people accessing the Azure console, and I can't control where they're accessing it from. Maybe they got malware on their browser. Maybe something's capturing their login credentials. And if I've got an administrator with access to that Azure console, that is the crown jewels. If someone gets into that environment, in theory, with the right credentials, they could destroy my entire cloud infrastructure, right? So what you say is, right, okay, I'm going to control who can have access to that. So you pick your IDP, you apply that to Parallels browser isolation. You say, look, don't accept, this is from an Azure point of view, don't accept any connection from anywhere other than this Parallels browser isolation instance. And what you then do is, it doesn't matter where the administrators are, they have to connect to Parallels browser isolation in order to access that Azure console kind of SaaS application. If they try and access the console directly, it will refuse them because you've turned on conditional access in Azure's case, right? So what that means is my users can be all over the place. My laptop could get stolen. My credentials could get compromised on my local physical device. But the administrator has to go through this Parallels browser isolation secure kind of interface in order to get into that kind of PBI environment. And then you could assign that to any application that you care to think of. So IDPs such as Okta, for example, you would plug in the source IP address, which is one of the biggest advantages of PBI. It's stationary while the users are mobile.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a SaaS level, a web browser level of kind of VPN. It's almost like you're kind of delivering that. I've got to get to the central point before that I can securely get to this application. So you do that with your enterprise apps. You then obviously find a way of dropping the other apps that you think are a security risk, full stop.
Yeah. It's clever. Very, very clever. I mean, it is almost, you say they're almost like a SaaS-based VPN access, but it is very, very similar to how we've been deploying VDI for some time. I mean, it's almost like, if you want to get access to your applications, you're going to come in and proxy through the virtual desktop, and then that's managed and secured by IT, and that's the whole reason why we do it. You're doing a very, very similar thing with the web browser accessing the SaaS apps.
Correct. You're just dropping the complexity. You're dropping the Windows licensing for the desktop that you would have with VDI. You're dropping all of those kind of things, and you're just honing into the browser itself.
It's really smart. I'm assuming that also just supports BYOD type of models as well, right? So anyone can rock up with their own laptop, their own web browser, do what they want at that level. But if they need to access a SaaS-based enterprise application, they're coming, again, through Parallels to do that.
Correct. Yeah, it's a zero trust model. So the assumption is that whatever the device they're accessing it from is already compromised. So if we make that assumption that it's already compromised, we can then start locking down what that device can then do, even from a kind of in VDI land, we're used to restricting clipboard and printing and uploads and downloads. Now we're doing that at the browser level, so we can start restricting that to your SaaS applications as well.
Good. It wouldn't be 2026 without mentioning the word artificial intelligence and AI. In the world of EUC, which I'm assuming you agree with me now is way more than just virtual desktop infrastructure. EUC just means so much more. Where does AI sit? What part do you think it plays? What's your opinion on that?
Any software company not using AI today, I can't see anything good happening for those companies, because it is becoming so prevalent. I look at this from two ways. One, I look at it from the customer's point of view. Over time, the customer isn't going to be making AI decisions. Well, over time, what's going to be happening is the software companies are going to be integrating AI and agents that talk to other AI agents, as ControlUp are doing as well, into what they do. So from a consumer point of view, you're just going to see that things are operating better and operating more efficiently, at least in general, unless you're the kind of customer that wants to operate your own AI model, which is maybe a different conversation, right? From a software company point of view, we're all using AI every day of the week. From an AI kind of agent point of view, like an unmonitored AI agent perspective, there's a whole lot of decisions that still need to be made there. What I think we're in danger of doing as an industry is every company producing their own agent and then making it proprietary, that you have to use our agent to access our stuff. Whereas what we actually need to do is settle on some standards, perhaps with open APIs, so that any agent can access my environment. What we're doing at Parallels is we're developing, and this has happened in the last 12 months, we're developing out manual steps or manual kind of trip hazards that are in place that a human would spot. So, for example, if I set up something where I need admin access to deploy 70 virtual machines to an organizational unit, for example, turns out that administration account I've used can't do that. You haven't done it yet, but it can't do it. Now, the human would spot that fairly fast, but an AI agent is just going to transact that thing and then move on to the next task, and it's going to fail. So we're engineering out all those kind of manually accessible trip hazards. So as soon as somebody sets something up, we are testing it out before it's even been attempted, and then flagging it at that point. So whoever is designing in the AI agent, for example, integrating with Parallels RAS, can actually, when that agent instigates the commands, it all runs perfectly smoothly. And that's been one of our big focuses on for the last 6 months, is to kind of get that in place. But it's very interesting times. There is some kind of talk about AI agents becoming the new users of VDI, because the agent themselves needs somewhere to operate.
Yep.
So where better to operate than in a virtual shared kind of desktop instance? And there is probably some truth in that, at least in the short term. But what I do know is the amount of change that's happening is enormous. So the number of startups in this industry are huge as well from an AI point of view. So in the next 5 years, I think we will see perhaps the big fish swallowing more small fish.
Yeah.
And certainly getting more efficient at doing it. You guys are doing great jobs from that point of view, from what I can see. And it's integrators like ControlUp, I think, that are best placed to have that kind of AI agent model that then takes information from multiple locations. So from your point of view, it must also be interesting.
Yeah, it's good feedback. Sorry to put you on the spot. Is there any impact, if we go back and talk about Parallels RAS quickly, VDI workloads, you deliver me a virtual desktop.
Yeah.
I've got 25 applications on it. Could be Outlook, could be Word, could be whatever it might be. As AI starts to come into more of the applications that I as an employee use, does that put pressure on the resources that are powering that VDI machine?
100%.
Right.
If you look at the laptop market, how the laptop market has introduced NPUs specifically to do that AI kind of workload, the overhead of these applications is expected to increase fairly significantly. Given what we've just said about things like hardware constraints and that kind of stuff, what's going to happen is if a customer's not got awareness of this, what's going to happen is they are simply going to upgrade to a new version of the operating system. And that new version of the operating system enables a whole plethora of things that didn't previously exist and weren't previously possible. All of a sudden, my user identity suffers. Now, you guys will be able to flag this immediately. In fact, with synthetic testing, you can flag it before they've started, right? But there will be some customers that haven't read the papers and don't know and have just done this upgrade. So I think it's a little bit of a turbulent time from that point of view. AI is going to be using more resource, but I've also seen recently the advent of customers looking at the SLMs, small language models, rather than large language models. So using AI in an application in a way that I only have a finite set of data, it's my data that's relevant for this particular job, perhaps that's the solution that we're looking for, because perhaps that will start solving for this kind of big behemoth kind of LLM model running away from me, stealing my data, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas an SLM focused on my company for my purposes might be what we see more of.
2026 for parallels. Is there anything we need to be looking out for? Anything exciting going on?
We're just about to launch PBI Private Access. So PBI is a cloud-based solution, completely cloud-based solution. The challenge potentially with that is we are in control of the browser instance that I've just described that we do the security thing of. Private access allows the customer to actually host those browser instances themselves. So they host it on their terms. So we're about to launch that. We've got lots of versions of kind of RAS. 2 more versions of RAS will be coming out in 2026. One of the biggest things we're looking at are things like cost dashboards, cost analysis for AVD and that kind of stuff, which I know is the game that you guys play as well. But customers are genuinely concerned about cost they're spending in public cloud and how they can save it. So I think we're all just trying to help customers out from that point of view to optimize their cost.
Yeah. And from an EUC point of view, any predictions for this year?
What I'm interested to see is where AVD ends up, because Microsoft are repositioning to W365. AVD, I think, will end up being useful to vendors such as us to layer on top of and deliver it as a service, which we then add benefit to. But I don't think it's going to be a marketed end user computing solution for customers from Microsoft's point of view. It'll be used as a set of building blocks, as far as I can see. So I'm interested to see what the growth of W365 is going to be. It's definitely going to grow, right? It's going gangbusters right now. But it's how many customers take that plunge in that kind of almost locked in model, but there are definite benefits to that versus keeping their options open and being able to flex. So it's going to be an interesting time to see how that all plays out. Microsoft are a big machine.
Yeah.
So you don't want to bet against them. But there are plenty of customers out there that don't want to buy into that model as much as there are the customers that do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely seeing a change in what organizations are choosing to deploy and to who. I think historically, you may have mentioned it earlier, historically someone either went with traditional fact client PCs or they went with VDI. And it was like one and or the other. And if it was VDI, they were probably going with one vendor or another. I've definitely, particularly the enterprise now, seen more organizations have a complete heterogeneous environment of, they've got 3,000 cloud PCs. They've also got a boatload of VDI or AVD or on-prem VDI. And then they've also got the traditional desktop and the SaaS-based applications, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's interesting that there are obviously different use cases and different reasons that are driving that, and it doesn't always come down to cost.
Yeah, I agree. And too many vendors are telling customers that everyone is doing it. With it, fill in whatever you want, right? Fill in whatever the vendor sells. I've been in the business, as we established at the beginning, for 25 years, and customers keep getting told that everyone is doing this next thing. And people do the next big thing, but it's nowhere near everyone. So maintaining that ability for a business to make their own decisions, I think, is important. And both our companies do that. Both our companies allow customers to say, look, I haven't got one way to deliver it. It's not a zero-sum game. I got complexity. Accept the complexity and optimize for it. Automate where you can, optimize where you can, but just accept that complexity is going to remain.
Yeah, good. Finally, if someone is interested in Parallels and or testing ControlUp and Parallels together, what's the best step for them? Where do they go?
The internet is your friend.
The internet is your friend.
Parallels.com. You can go to ControlUp.com, and there are blogs and try now, demo now, links to Parallels RAS from the ControlUp website itself.
Yep.
The same is true from a Parallels point of view to try ControlUp, or reach out to your local Parallels account manager or partner, and I'm sure they'll be able to help.
Chris, as ever, complete pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today at beautiful Wembley. And thank you all for listening. If you do want more information, obviously, as Chris says, either visit one of the websites or get in contact with one of your partners. And for now, thanks very much.